when we read the script and it started with the Easter, we all just got this big laugh. And we made a hat for one of the characters that was taken from the research, the size of it, and it did not fit in the frame of the doorway. So we had to chop it off. We all looked at each other and was like, oh my God, this went too far. We need to scale back a little bit.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am Mrs. Russell's valet, Mr. Williams, but you could also call me Spencer.
Hello, Spencer. You would make a great valet. Like, I feel like you'd be like top tier, never be out of a job.
Yeah, if it's like valet in terms of like, I feel like in the Gilded Age, it's a bit different. You kind of do a little bit of everything. And then there's, modern day valets that are driving cars. Would not be good at that. I do not enjoy parking, but I would definitely serve. Gilded. Yeah.
Like planning the parties, introducing people,
helping her pick her outfits, standing at her door and just try not to smile, looking at her lovingly.
Oh, yeah. Know. But you got to keep that stoic look on your face.
Yeah. Hey, Elizabeth.
How's it going?
It's going. It's been a busy time. You know, it's award season. So I've been busy doing all of that. Elizabeth, we have a fun episode in store. But before we get into it, I think we need to take some time to dive into our inbox a little bit. We have a lot of feedback to go through.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Well, first, our Fallout bonus episode just came out recently with costume designer Amy Westcott. Have you finished Fallout yet?
Oh, yeah. I finished it. Okay. I finished it the other day.
Yeah, it's like
that was good. It was good.
I'm obsessed with it. I mean, everyone who listened to the episode knows I'm obsessed with it. I wouldn't be surprised if we lost some listeners after the nerdy levels I was giving off on that episode. But for this first comment, it's actually coming from our YouTube, which I gotta say, our YouTube is kicking off. So if you all like to see some pictures of our episodes, head over to our YouTube page. We're posting shorts. Daniel's posting videos of our episodes. Definitely worth to watch. Those episodes come out on Wednesdays at the moment, but with the channels moving and grooving, so there might be some changes soon. So the first comment about Fallout is from @Kristen3060 on YouTube. And they said, I'm a costume designer and I'm enjoying this interview while playing Fallout 76 at the same time. Thank you for this channel. I love it. And that's so nice. Thanks, Kristen. I actually do listen to podcasts while I play games sometimes, but only like the nice, easy games because my attention span isn't that strong.
Like while you're doing some Stardew Valley farming.
Ooh, oh yeah, that's the ticket right there.
Right.
On TikTok, AJS Concepts said, such a great job, especially in the Vault-Tec suits. Awesome textures in distressing. Yes. What did you think of the Vault suits, Elizabeth?
Oh my gosh, I thought they were so cool. I thought they were great. They like balanced like this hyper stylized like concept of like the 50s and 60s with something very realistic, and it just worked. It really just worked the whole time. So I loved it, especially the Vault-Tec suits. They were so funny, but then when she got into the wasteland and it like evolved over time, I was like, you go, girl. You look badass in that suit.
Yeah, they're really cool. And I was excited to see how they would do them because in the games, like Amy mentions in the episode, they're very flat and just form-fitting. So they look ridiculous in the suit. So I was interested to see how they would bring it to life. And I love just the use of texture and that like leather pleating they did on the arms. I thought made it kind of edgy too. And just, I don't know, a little bit more realistic. And I really want one, honestly. That might be a Comic-Con look. It's easy. It looks good.
Yeah.
And then we got one costume to rule them all. This one is from Stabo Crabo. And their one costume to rule them all was just a power armor, which I gotta say is a good one because I cannot believe those things are real. Every time I see them, it just blows my mind.
That's like hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah,
that those exist. It's wild.
Could you imagine having one like at home, just walking around the house in it?
No, I couldn't. I could not.
I'm so jealous. Let's actually go to another bonus episode, the Shogun episode, where we had costume designer Carlos Rosario. Have you finished Shogun yet?
I have not finished Shogun. I got caught up in Fallout and forgot about Shogun.
That's the problem with this podcast. There's just too much.
There's too much.
Well, I love the conversation with Carlos Rosario. I think he's so talented. And actually, a lot of the messages we got were from other costume designers, such as Jenny Tamim, who did the costumes from House of the Dragon. She commented saying, beautiful costumes, just an incredible job, which I have to agree. And that's coming from Jenny Tamim, who's done Harry Potter, House of the Dragon, so on and so forth. So, and then, of course, Aggie Rogers messaged in just saying, Carlos... dude, you rock. Like, yeah.
That's sweet.
We got another one costume ruled them all from Olivia of Sweden. They said their favorite costume was actually Toranaga's peacock armor. I'm not sure if you got into that armor yet, but once you see it.
I don't think so. Will I know what it is?
I think you will. It's a good one.
Okay.
And then someone else commented on Instagram about Mariko, who is one of the main characters from the show. She's a translator. Author Walt Muscle on Instagram said, I saw Mariko's individual pieces as singular poems. I missed that Carlos aligned these costumes with Mariko's character arc and create an epic. That was fascinating. And gotta agree. I mean, the fact that costume designers are able to tell such like intricate, sometimes under the surface stories with the use of color and textures and silhouettes is amazing to me, and Carlos is great at it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll definitely see more as you finish the show, but we'll follow up with you.
Yes. You will know when I finished it.
Yeah. And then, Elizabeth, we have to talk about The Mummy, and as expected, the inbox was packed full of messages about our Mummy episode that we can't even get through all of them. There's just so many. So what I have gathered is that everyone just finds everyone in this movie to be just incredibly too hot, too sexy. No one can handle it. So,
I mean, accurate.
On Instagram at Ms. Morningstar said, this movie is a reason why my standards are too high. And
I agree. I think that's I have that problem too.
Marf's Love on Instagram said the obsession for this film was endless. Got to the point I could recite the whole script by ear. Truly obsessed 11-year-old here. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. I could probably. I don't think I could recite it word by word, but I don't know. It's a good test.
I might have been able to do it in like middle or high school. Maybe not the whole thing, but like good chunks of it.
Yeah, I mean, we took a little Mummy break, which is why this episode was so exciting because we got to get back to our happy place, as one would say. Okay, this comment made me die. Cherish Richardson on TikTok said, "The way I used to think about Emotep's thighs, he was out of control." And that's all it says.
That's fair.
Very fair.
That's fair.
The comments got so horny at one point that I noticed 3 or 4 people signing on to essentially a thread or a letter to Arnold Vosloo, just petitioning you and I to somehow contact him and just let him know he's hot. So that's happening.
I mean, If he doesn't know that already, I'd be surprised, but
Look, if we had that
Hey.
poll with Arnold, he would be a regular on the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Bon My K Bath, their comment just said, "Damn, Daddy Emotep." I don't think you all are talking much about the costumes, which is the point of all this, but that's fine. We'll make an exception.
yeah. This is the one
And then-
exception.
Yeah. And then we got one costume to rule them all from our
Yes.
Instagram channel page. Robert JC Pugh said their favorite costume was Evie's boat look. It was flawless. And yeah, I mean, that's a good one.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
then Jedi Manda said Evie's library look was their favorite costume. So yeah.
Both
at
good
the end of the
options.
day, yeah, I think Evie really is the one to beat in terms of the one costume to rule them all. If you want to start getting into the hotness conversation, then it just gets more complicated. But
That's like you can't compare any of them to one another. Like it's too complicated.
yeah,
It's too complicated.
it's too complicated. But alas, it was fun nonetheless. So thank you all for writing in. We love reading your messages, even if they're just, if you need to get out your horny internal thoughts about Emotep, that's fine. I mean, we're here for it.
Oh, sorry, the thighs comment. It's just still got me.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting to hear that on the Gilded Age episode. Elizabeth,
Yes.
today's episode, highly anticipated. What are we talking about?
This week we watched The Gilded Age. Probably like this is top 5 of like my favorite shows currently on TV.
Oh, it's the absolute best.
Yeah.
So this is our second Gilded Age episode. Actually, we're talking about season 2 today. So there's already more than an hour's worth of us talking about this show.
I was going to
on
say
the
that was a long
podcast.
one.
That's a long one, and it's about to get even longer because I just think this is a perfect show. I just don't get why more people aren't watching it. It's flawless.
It really is. And it's like, I think I know I've told you this before. I don't know if I said it on the podcast though. It's like low stakes drama.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the intensity of drama, but the stakes are so low because the majority of it is just like these rich people problems
Right.
that you can just like relax and be like, oh my gosh, did people really live like that?
The majority of this show, the idea of like it's not about the destination but the journey, that's literally all the drama. No one
Yeah.
cares who wins the opera war. You just want to watch
No.
them fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't care how many times Mrs. Van Ryn complains that her niece is working. I just want to see what they're wearing while they argue it out because they both look beautiful.
Yeah, they kill it every time. Man, we've been talking about this episode for a while. I think we should just get into it because obviously we have lots of thoughts and feelings this episode. I'll start off with a summary, if you don't mind, Lady Elizabeth.
Not at all.
All right. The American Gilded Age was a period of immense economic change, great conflict between old ways and brand new systems, and huge fortunes made and lost. In season 2 of The Gilded Age, Bertha Russell inches toward a leading role in society. Marion Brooke started teaching. Ada begins a new courtship, and Peggy taps into her activist spirit. And that is a very tiny summary for a very long, perfect season of The Gilded Age.
Absolutely. Go watch it. It's so much fun. If you like our podcast, you're going to love this show.
Right. It has everything we love. It's just good costumes, people arguing while holding glasses or teacups and
Teacups and
just throwing,
champagne flutes.
yeah, and throwing shade.
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's go behind the costumes. We have creator Julian Fellows and costume designer Kasia Waliska Momona. You will know her work from Capote, for which she got a Costume Designer Guild nomination, Little Manhattan, Moneyball, Moonrise Kingdom, Bridge of Spies, A Quiet Place, Ready Player One, Quiet Place Part 2, and The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. And of course, today we're talking about the Gilded Age, for which she got another Costume Designer Guild nomination.
Yeah. She's racking in these nominations. She has 2 for the Gilded Age, actually.
Oh, yeah, one for each season, right?
Yeah. She's killing it. I'm such a big fan of Kasia Woliska-Mamona. And you and I have been talking to her for a long while about these costumes. And some of you might not know, but I do a lot of the outreach on the show. And I've been searching far and wide to get Kasia on the podcast. It was rough. I couldn't find her to save my life. And one day I was at a party and I happened to be talking to our friend Christine Wada, and I was introduced to someone, and it happened to be one Kasia Woliska-Mamona.
Yes.
So I'm so excited to say that we became fast friends, and she agreed to join us today on the podcast. Elizabeth, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by the myth, the legend, Kasia Woliska-Mamona.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Hi, this is Dan, audio engineer of the podcast, here to let you know that if you wanted to support the show, you can head over to theartofcostume.com/podstore. There you can buy some awesome TeePublic merch with the podcast logo, such as a shirt, coffee mug, stickers, and of course, a baby onesie. Thanks for all your support.
So excited to introduce costume designer Kasia Woliska-Mamona. Hey Kasia, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be on your podcast. Thank you.
We're so excited to talk to you. We've been talking about you and your work for a long while. And Elizabeth, I didn't even tell you, I saw Kasia at the Costume Awards. I was talking to Christine Wada, and Christine was like, "Oh, have you met Kasia before?" And I almost spit my drink out. I was like, I've been looking for you.
That was fun.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of questions, so I'll just jump right into it. I first want to begin with the overall picture. The Gilded Age takes place during the late 1800s, a fascinating period in history that we have also come to know for its progressive styles and trends. So when you started the Gilded Age, can you tell us about your research and how you came to prepare for this project?
For me, every project's process starts with reading the script and analyzing the script and figuring out what is it, what are the steps that I need to take to discover what is the underlying language, visual language for all the characters, what is the world that we are discovering. And after the first initial discussions with a writer-director, I dive into deep research. I work with a researcher, Susanna Gilbo. She's worked on every project with me for many, many years. And she started building a library, visual library of the period, which by now, after second season, has about 36,000 images, maybe 40,000 images of the period, of the paintings, drawings, fashion magazines, photographs. It's a giant library. We also were lucky to get access to several museums, which during pandemic documented their collections in a spectacular way. Right now, you can have access to most of the museums' libraries, costume libraries, with those spectacular views of all the dresses from every angle. We can see clearly every detail, unlike in previous years when you had to make an appointment in a museum and wear white gloves and maybe get to see 5 or 6 dresses at one of the sessions. Right now, we have access to all the museums. Most of the museums did digitize their files. And after that initial understanding and learning of the period, we start with the creative, we start forming the language of what is it that it needs to be. And in the Gilded Age, very clearly, it became very clear to me, and I proposed this to all of our parties, that we needed to find the language of excitement of that period. That period was so exceptionally new for its time. So, of course, with the variation between, I mean, the world is so varied, there was so many variety of approaches in that period, but there was this, there was definitely newness that I was very much excited to discover. And that meant creating a language for that period that we, the modern audience, felt that it was a new language. So how do you do it if we, the contemporary audience, we've been programmed by the last hundreds of years of fashion, the history, the fashion and the current fashions, that we are still affected by the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. We know who is John Galliano. We understand the spectacular world of fashion that is around us. We do understand Christian Dior. We understand all those great designers that brought so much freshness to our perceptions of what is exciting. So I felt that in order for us to feel this newness of the period of the Gilded Age, we have to put a little bit of the prism of the modern eye in looking at the period and figuring out how we're going to look at that period to find the pieces that really evoke this feeling of excitement. And I think that started this process of the selection and pre-selections and manipulation of colors. And we also knew we are not making a documentary. We are following a story, fictional story, that is based very much on real events, inspired by real events, a story that stays within the framework of the period, but still creates a new language. So that was the process of discovery of how to blend all of those ideas that I just mentioned into one consistent vision. And so I think that's the design part of the process of, many discussions with all the creators, many discussions with the actors, and many discussions with my team, because after the initial design process, there's the giant task of how do you execute a project like that?
Right. Yeah. Which I can't even imagine, because there's so many different characters, so many different storylines happening. And so much of this series is focused on the divide between the old elite who grew up with money and social power, and then a new wave of New Yorkers. How do you portray that contrast through costume? For example, we have Agnes Van Ryn and Mrs. Astor compared to Mrs. Russell, who I'm going to talk about quite a bit later. But so how do you find that line between these two groups of people?
It's, again, a lot of building of the worlds of characters. That's what we as costume designers, that's what we are trained to portray, to create those worlds. For each character, to find a language that is very particular to each person and very different from each other. And I feel costume represents like so many anthropological discoveries. Every character presents a world. In the costume, we understand the history of each character by looking at those people, looking at each character. And that's a lot of study of where does Agnes live? What is her background? What is her financial status? What is her social status? What is her character? Is it demure? Is it romantic? Is it playful? We know she's not romantic. She's not playful. She probably was one day, and there was
maybe
there was definitely a wealth of history that I need to represent with each character. And I think this is the fun part, because you also don't tell it all. You leave some speculation for each of the character, because we don't know fully. We don't display all of the details. A lot of it is the surprises as the plots develop. And you rely on a lot of like historical concepts of what is the old guard, what is the new guard, and how do we as society understand color, how we perceive color, how we subconsciously react to color, to patterns, to geometry. We have that information coded in us. All of us are coded. We know what yellow means. We know what deep red means. We know what dark green means in a very specific frame. So it is about finding this language, like a puzzle for each character, of what is the information in each character. And that's the most fun part, like the developing of the characters, finding the skins for each character is really fantastic. I rely heavily on the research. The research is always the base of how I create visual boards, how I create the first responses, because that's how I communicate with the director. That's how I communicate with Julian. That's how I communicate with the directors of photography, with the production design, and with my team. And then from that research, the characters start to emerge. So the first season was very challenging, because we were developing all the characters had to be developed. So you're finding out the history of each character and building up the worlds. It's like building. It's like playing. It's building. It's loading up each world. Like we have endless amount of design boards and loading up those boards with images.
There's so many characters too.
So many characters, and the characters kept emerging and merging. Our library of the design boards is massive now. I think it's like a separate room with many shelves of the big design boards. But that's always my tool. The design boards are my tool of communications. And then from that, on the first season, we had 2 illustrators, because it was so busy that there was no way anybody, one illustrator or me, could keep up with the drawings, because we literally had to create hundreds of characters. On the second season, I was doing my own very rough sketches, which my team learned how to read those fast sketches, and then we were building fabrics on top of it, and learning from what we learned in the first period. We were learning how to further build on the knowledge of the first period.
Amazing. Oh, I'm already like living for this.
Yeah, and I love that season 2 starts off with us seeing all these incredible characters. And
that was fun.
Yeah, this Easter scene is just incredible. How did you and your team pull this off?
Wow. First of all, I have to speak about the team, because discussing this project without discussing the team would be sacrilegious. It is an army of us who are making this. An army of extraordinary talented people. I am so lucky to be in the room with the most talented people in this country. That's what I think. And it is people who are instrumental in executing this project. Patrick Wiley, Isabel Simon, Caroline Spitzer, Becca Freund, Greg Poplik, Subakua, Denise Andres, Rebecca Levin, and all those people have teams of people. So it is this army of super talented, experienced professionals who are so passionate and so supportive of this project that brought all of their expertise, brought all their sources, brought the connections of how this project was. How it was possible to make this project happen. We worked with the makers in New York. We worked with a lot of makers and costume houses in Europe. And I think that there was this wild enthusiasm that spread between everybody that was involved, the embroiderers, the milliners, of course, the milliners. How can we talk about the scene without them talking about them?
We could do a whole podcast about them.
So there is this. We are so excited, and we are going back to season 3, and 98% of people are coming back, and we just all have big smiles. It's a very challenging job. It's extraordinary, keeps us on our toes, but it's also being allowed to participate in this level of creativity and being part of this explosion of creativity creates this infectious energy that we all share, because it is really being close to this creative source is extremely rewarding.
When you saw the script for the Easter scene, were you just I could imagine your head must have been spinning.
I think that when we read the script and it started with the Easter, we all just got this big laughter, this big moment of just like we looked at each other and we started laughing and dove very quickly into the research. And the first thing that I realized from the research was the size of the hats. And that idea of those hats, it still continues. I mean, we still see elements of those hats in pockets of the society in the States. And I think there was this amazing discovery. I also realized that in between the first and second season, that in the first season, we had to train ourselves we had to train our eyes and almost like prepare ourselves for what was coming in the second season. In reality, those hats were that big. And I think it just took so much courage to go for it, because those hats are enormous. And I went even bigger in the test trials. Like, we made a hat for one of the characters that was taken from the research, the size of it, and it did not fit in the frame of the doorway. So we had to chop it off. We all looked at each other and it was like, oh my God, this went too far. We need to scale back a little bit. So, and it also about finding the proportion, right? What makes sense for us, the contemporary eye, and for the doors, frames, and how we can film the scenes without covering all of the faces. But so the Easter was, so there was the discovery of the hat. And also we knew that it has to be the spectacular extravaganza. That is, the whole town is going to the service. And this is also the display of the old world, the new world, the servants, the Black elite church. It's a giant scene. We had enough time to prepare for the scene, and it was a spectacular fun preparing for the scene. I mean, I played around very much with the Easter colors. I mean, it's Easter. We all know what Easter means. And from the research, I also played off from research from later periods of the colors of Easter, of the celebrations of Easter, and fed in, because I mean, there's definitely an element of speculation that you have to do while doing research, because not everything is documented. There was actually, at that period, we didn't have that much documentation of the colors other than some photographs and drawing inspirations, even from packaging of candies for Easter. Just a lot of influences of what we needed to feed the atmosphere and the colors and the spectacularness of Easter.
So fun. I could rewatch that episode over and over and over.
Absolutely. Well, Gilded Age is obviously very much an ensemble series. It's really Marion Brooks' story that kind of guides us through as she drifts between, her aunts and New Money, New York. Can you tell us about how her costumes help tell her story?
Marion, we know that Marion comes from a small village. She grew up without her mother, so without the guidance of a female figure. She has naturally a sense of great style, and I think that people are born with a sense of great style, and she is one of those people. And then exposed to New York, she trains her eye to develop that sense of style. I think we all are born with certain responses of what we like and what we don't like. So I think maybe I take it back to the idea of great style. I mean, that's very, very subjective, because we all might have different opinions about it, actually. In her case, in her character, I call it great style because for me, somebody who has great style they know themselves and they hold their own opinions strongly within the new influences. And I feel like Marion does that pretty well. Except that at some point at the end of season 2, I think being exposed to the New York and being pretty much in between the two worlds of the old money and new money, we felt that at some point Marianne starts to experiment with fashions, and maybe it's not the most natural match for her who she is.
Mhm.
And we felt with the director that it's okay that she misses here and there, because that's okay too for somebody young who is developing the sense of style. I think that I started with her with those very delicate patterns of flowery patterns that I designed for her character, that were just beautiful fabrics, very much inspired by period patterns, and worked with our team to develop those beautiful prints, and a lot of softer colors. She starts also in mourning. One of the outfits here is that we know her father died. And first she starts in the full mourning in black, and then goes to half mourning, which is grays with black and purple with black. Then we quickly take her out of the mourning, because that's what the family decides, that she, as a lady coming into the society, she cannot be in mourning, because that will be making her less present in the society. In season 2, we find Marianne discovering her professional path. I mean, she's a teacher. So that was also an adjustment of how to adjust her romantic flowing dresses to costumes that represent a young teacher. And there's a certain level of elegance and respect in her clothing, her professional clothing. At the same time, I very much played with her ball gowns. I mean, her ball gowns are, I feel like, a dream. And and they are just so beautifully constructed by Eric Winterling. I mean, I have to mention all of our makers: Eric Winterling, Tricorn, Barak, Gilles, and Mark Koppel. They are extraordinary makers. Those people accomplished Bethany. Those people accomplished extraordinary works of art, and brought the experience of many, 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 many years of experience that make this whole job possible. Working with people like Kathy Marshall from Tricorn, and it's just extraordinary. Those people are so experienced, so talented, and they guided this process with the construction in the most exquisite way.
Right. It's just so many incredible artisans involved in all this, which is why, we all love the show so much. Is it takes so many. I love when people say it takes a village, but this film series needed a army, like you said earlier. I am excited to talk about Bertha Russell. I mean, Kasha, she is. I could just watch an hour of just Carrie Coon just acting. Honestly, she is so incredible, and every single costume, it's just, she's sharp, funny, fierce, theatrical, dramatic, over the top, innovative. I don't have enough words. So just working with Miss Russell, this must be like the dream for a costume designer, because every look she's in, it's just, she's always trying to top herself, I feel like.
It is I think it's beyond a dream, I must say, because you cannot even dream it up. There's this moment when you are working on piece like this, is that when you get the information of what needs to happen, then you do your research, and you find out all the pieces of the puzzle, and you get those incredible actors, and the costumes start to emerge. It is pretty amazing. It's almost impossible to talk about it, because it's a process, it's like a creative process that we're trying to describe. And in some ways, it's not, it's kind of hard to describe when all the elements are starting piecing together. What we do know about Bertha is that she is so determined to be part of the society. So that builds a frame for Bertha. At the same time, she is a woman who is absolutely interested in what is the newest, the best, and what comes from Europe, and what is it that will make her better than most of the members of the society. So it's this interesting frame that I needed to find her language within that frame, because she cannot break away from that frame. At the same time, she's right on the edge of it. So that's the fine line of like, how on earth do you going to balance on that edge? And how do you not push it towards too modern or too conservative? So I looked at thousands of images that inspired Bertha. Every element that Bertha wears comes from this extremely innovative period of the Gilded Age. Like, some of the research is almost hard to believe that those shapes existed. The level of asymmetry, the level of boldness, the level of organic draping, it all existed. It just, I think you just have to study the history in a very rigorous way and pull the elements, what creates the newness of the period for her. And I think that there was so much material within the research that in a way it was, I think I'm still surprised so frequently how modern those pieces look in that period. Like, I think that the fashion designers for years have been drawing from that period and finding the source of shapes and elements of tailoring that come from that period that are so incredibly lasting for decades with its newness and boldness. Like this dress that you're portraying here, this is taken from research. I manipulated colors, I pushed the colors, but the colors are also very much inspired by a lot of the paintings, a lot of the visual vocabulary of that period. Those colors, those interesting combinations of colors existed in the period. It's just sometimes we think about the period in a different way and look at it differently, like not fully acknowledging that there was so much modernity already there. So, and it's interesting because for every design board, I created this historical back for each of the board, because we were always laughing that I will be probably told that it didn't exist, but it actually did. And I might have taken apart the dresses and used top of one dress and bottom from another, but I would consider it to be a big crime.
Yeah. So much creativity with Mrs. Russell.
So much. And so much creativity in Newport, New York's best getaway. And Newport just gives the costumes a whole different spin. How would you explain the Newport aesthetic, and how do you translate that into your costumes?
The Newport, that was a very different vocabulary than the city. It is summer. It is very different fabrics. It's linens, very light silks. It is breezy. It is also designed for lifestyle of leisure and celebrations and parties and events. So it's a very specific vocabulary. And there's, once again, so much research of the Newport, and all those shapes, as wild and bold they are, majority of them came from the real research. It's a lifestyle that was for the privileged. People had just trunks of new outfits designed for the Newport events, which is endless amount of pleasure and fun.
Love that. I also with this season loved Miss Turner becoming Mrs. Winterton, who was clearly ready for payback. This must have been a fun character to design.
That was a fantastic character to design, because it was the combination. I think what was amazing about this character, that she really knows the language of the old guard and she really knows the language of the new guard. So I felt that for her, being the wife of an elderly gentleman, she needs to obey by the rules of the old guard, at the same time create this newness of the new guard. So I chose very conservative silhouettes, but put her in very bright, light pastel colors of the new guard. So that was the approach. And of course, building this incredible sophistication to her, because we did know that Turner was the advisor for Bertha for all those years while working for her. So she gets to play with what she knows and uses it to this incredible manipulation of strategizing her powers.
Oh, I love it. I think one of my favorite scenes is when they see each other for the first time. I could rewatch that moment forever and ever.
I know, that's
so hilarious.
Yeah. That's Julian. That's just Julian's building of the story and suspenses and humanity, and it's just he creates those really, really fun scenarios for us to portray.
One of my favorite looks from this whole series was Aunt Ada's wedding gown. It's something we typically wouldn't consider traditional in today's world, but it was so perfect for Aunt Ada. What was your concept behind her look?
So cute. I'm gonna cry again.
Once again, I know it's so beautiful, right? That whole scene is so beautiful. Once again, driven by the material, driven by the script, and driven by the research. And that in the Gilded Age, majority of the ladies who were getting married did not wear white. White was very rare. And particularly for somebody who was not 20 years old, that was definitely, it was usually a day dress, a pretty day dress with a veil. And that's exactly what we did for Aunt Ada. And I thought it was fun to discover this because I didn't know about that. I was expecting when I read it on the page that she's getting married. I thought, how on earth are we going to do this? Because she has so little time to create her dress. We knew that it was taking time creating the dresses. Once we discovered the research, it became the answer was kind of easy because we knew that it will have to be the dress that is a day dress with elements, what we understand now as the wedding elements with the touches of the white and this beautiful veil.
I love it. I also loved Peggy's just exquisite ball gown. Could you talk about working with Denise Benton as Peggy Scott and this fantastic ball look?
The butterflies.
Thank you. She is a dreamer. I mean, as are all the actors, we are so lucky to work with those superstars who are not only so phenomenal at their jobs, they're also beautiful, kind, respectful people who understand the process of costume making and are extraordinary, respectful and collaborative in the process. So creating this was such a fantastic piece written by Julian of this ball that we get to design yet another ball. And
ball every other episode.
No, I was like, that is just a dream again. And I did find a piece of research that inspired this dress very much and then transformed the colors of it. And it was a very fast, we didn't have much time to make this dress. And it was this incredibly complicated process of printing that needed to happen. It was Caroline Spitzer was in charge of the printing and collaborated. Once again, we work with two amazing printers, Dynamics, and we work with Patrick with his studio. And it was all about finding the geometry of the butterflies on the dress. That was the big technical challenge. And Caroline kept making little minis from paper to make sure that those butterflies are flying just in the right perfect positions. And we kept adjusting the prints because it's not that easy to print that kind of a pattern on a dress form. That was actually technically a really challenging dress to make, and it was Kathy Marshall and the printers and us figuring out the proportions and placement and the sizes of the butterflies. It was we figuring out how the butterflies are going to fit into the dress. I mean, like, could this be any more of a dream job? Like, let's figure out how far back the butterfly is going to be on the dress. It was kind of phenomenal.
Well, I personally feel like the dream keeps going because we get to the epic season finale in terms of winning and losing. And we all knew the season was going to end with a bang, but to me, I feel like it exceeded all expectations. The opera war between Mrs. Russell's Metropolitan and Mrs. Astor's Academy of Music. It's clear that Mrs. Russell won the fight, and I feel like part of it is seen in the costume. So, can you take us back to the costumes of the opera finale? We could probably do a whole podcast on this specific episode.
The challenge of this finale was portraying the two different worlds in two opera houses and creating this dynamic of the two different worlds and this competition and like the rhythm of this episode. And we knew that the old guard is going to be this classic whites and classic deep mixed with deep colors and very what we do know as the classic glamour colors. And I wanted to break it up with the colors for the new world. And those colors did exist. They didn't maybe exist in those combinations, but they did exist. And I decided to use this mint green for Bertha because if you watch the final moment when she steps into this giant red opera house, I felt there was no other color other than this mint green that would separate her from this whole giant world and focus your eyes on that mint green. And I think it worked actually for her to be separated from the world around her. And I decided
that's what she wants.
decided to use this famous iron dress. That famous iron dress was made in white and black, was made in pink, and was made in pale blue, if I'm correct. I don't 100% remember, but I'm pretty sure that those are the three colors that the iron dress existed in. And so I manipulated it to this mint green because this mint green also stood for something that represented the newest. That was the color that was quite new in that period. And I felt that Bertha was the woman who was embracing all those provocative values probably of that period. And at the same time, using a very classic dress that was keeping her within the framework of the society.
And we have to give a shout out to Gladys as well, who really was coming into her own in that purple look. It is one of the coolest costumes I think I've seen in a minute. It is so good. And I know she's having kind of a rough night. She might not know it yet, but she looks amazing.
Yeah, that was again like deciding to use this color. I definitely felt that it was a bold move for this part and the design part. It just felt that that's what it needed to be in order for them to separate. This is the language of filmmaking. I think that we decided to embrace is that creating a spectacle within the framework of the history. And the shapes come very much from historical research. The color comes from historical research. But I think that the way I was applying it was driven by the story, by the needs of each scene, versus on portraying the reality of what was happening at that period. So I feel like I was responding to the rhythm of the script, the rhythm of what that material was calling for, how it needed to be represented visually. And that sometimes demands a invention of a language that is very specific for the piece that we are creating versus reflecting just the history of the period. And that's the big dilemma that we all just keep discussing. Is this how it's done? But this is how we have been doing it for the Gilded Age. I think it's very much driven by the page, what's on the page, what's what is the story driving the visual representation.
Well, I mean, we could easily talk to you for hours, but we do want to end with one final question because this has been such a joy. Thank you so much. The Gilded Age is such a hit, and we're so happy to hear it's moving on for a third season. So, what has the show meant to you so far? Now doing 2 seasons, and I hope a third as well.
For me, working on this piece means so many things. One is the collaboration of those extraordinary talents, the writer, Julian Fellows, the producers, the director, the DPs, the production designer. Working on this material is so extremely rewarding because I consider myself to be a New Yorker, transplanted from Poland, but I'm a New Yorker by now. And discovering the history of New York in such detail from that period is such a privilege. It's such a treat to live in that world of history of the town that I love so much. Also addressing the social issues that are happening in that period, which are extremely valid still today, and representing the different social, economic, political moments that we're starting to discover in season 2, and I'm not sure what we're going to be discovering in season 3, but I speculate that we'll be discovering more. It's extremely valid for me because we continuously learn about presence from the lens of history. It also, for me, I am so proud to be part of this team that is creating it. And we all learn from each other continuously. We are sharpening our skills daily. I think that we're building our knowledge every day of what we have learned so far and how we go into the future. And it is such a joyful process, collaborating with those incredible artisans and designers and makers. It's truly workplace of masters, and you continuously learn from each other. It's that part is spectacular. I am also so proud to be part of entertainment that truly entertains people right now, because I think that we as the world are in an extremely challenging place, and we all need entertainment, pure pleasure and entertainment. And I think Gilded Age provides it really well. The response that we get from people from the street is really beautiful. Like, there's so many people who truly enjoy the time with Gilded Age, and some might be critics, and that's okay. Nevertheless, they still enjoy it. So that's the fun part. Like, even the haters love it. So that is and everybody was like, we still love it. So I think that's the fun part. I was like, it's really fun to be part of entertainment. It's really, I feel like we providing something for the soul that is quite rewarding. And if I can keep delivering the beauty, it's a privileged place to be.
Costume designer Kasia Waliska Mamona, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a joy.
Yes, yes.
And we can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you so much.
That was great. That was everything I wanted from that interview.
That was amazing. I think my only complaint is that I wish it was like 3 hours longer.
Right. I always just want to like sit down with the costume designer in front of a television and just like watch whatever we're talking about and be like, oh, what about this? What about this?
Right. I mean, I have 1,000,002 questions, but I'm so thankful that she got to talk with us and talk about this amazing show. She gave us so much great insight, and I'm just so thankful to Kasia. And I hope, I'm just saying, there needs to be an Emmy nomination in the near future. I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah.
Deserves it. dare I say, possibly an Emmy win, but that's for the Academy to figure out. Elizabeth, we've been talking a lot about costumes, but I think we still have a little bit of time. I don't know about you, but I kind of want to talk about some Gilded Age scandals.
I love this idea. Truly. I truly love this idea.
Okay, well, what we're going to do, since we don't want this episode to be 3 hours long, we're going to do a quick fire round of scandals where I'm going to say the scandal and we could give, a couple sentences or whatever about these scandals.
Okay.
I mean, you're also co-producer, so if we break the rules, that's on you, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. So first one, Elizabeth, this is a softball one.
Okay.
Larry Russell and his romance of Susan Blaine, the widow.
Ooh. That was hot, but I think it might come back to bite him in the ass.
I gotta say, I thought it was super hot and I'm super into it. And I just think Larry Russell was killing it, honestly.
He really was. He really was. Yeah.
I was very invested and I felt sad when it had to come to an end. That was my one time I shook my finger at Mrs. Russell. I was like, no, Miss Russell, let it happen.
Yeah. She had a point though. For the day and age. She had a point.
She had a point. I get it. I'm sure back then it probably was frowned upon. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Next scandal. The arrival of Mrs. Winterton.
Oh my gosh. This was scandalous. This was so scandalous. Just like when you see her at the end of the episode, you're like, who, what, when, where, why, and how? Like what? And like, I was so confused at first. I didn't register that it was her because she freaking looks like Mrs. Russell. Like, it is so wild and shocking. And then just the way she tries and like destroys Mrs. Russell. I'm like, I get it, girl. But also like, what's the point? You married a rich man. Just enjoy your life.
I had the same exact reaction the first time when the Russells turn around and see Mrs. Winterton. I had the same reaction. I was like, who the, what the, how the, but I also agree with you though. I was like, this beef is unfounded. I mean, I get it. They don't have to be best friends, but I also thought they had like a decent relationship. It just felt also, a little aggressive.
The way Mrs. Winterton like twisted the narrative of her trying to like seduce Mr. Russell. Yeah. I was like, that's no, girl. That's so underhanded and shady. Like, how dare you?
So then our next scandal is Mrs. Russell. No, you're Mrs. Russell finding out about Mr. Russell and Mrs. Winterton. And you kind of started on it, but yeah, I felt sad. I don't know. I thought Carrie Coon was giving a masterclass in acting. Actually it was a bit over the top, which I loved. Yeah. But that's how Mrs. Russell would respond. And I was disappointed in all parties, including Mr. Russell, for just being like, oh, well, that happened. I'm like, but you didn't say anything. Communication is key, Elizabeth.
It absolutely is. I have to say, I was also disappointed in him for that. I feel like after she had like already left, I feel like he should have been like, hey, I don't know if it was right or wrong of me to keep this until now. But now that she is no longer here, this happened. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like Mrs. Russell still would have been pissed about it, but I don't think she would have been so angry.
She still would have been pissed. I actually don't see a scenario where she's not pissed.
I think he would have had to have gone directly from that room to her room and been like, we gotta fire your maid. This just happened.
Yeah, that is the only way, and that was not gonna happen. So anyways, okay, next scandal. Armstrong and the return of Miss Scott.
Yes. I was so happy that Miss Scott came back because the home is just more fun with her in it.
Yeah.
Armstrong though is still just like Mrs. Van Ryn. I get why she gives her so many chances, but I'm also like, come on, like,
Yeah.
she's not a very good person.
But the HR department needs to be littered with complaints because Armstrong still has not learned her lesson. She's still a jerk all the time, a racist jerk all the time.
All the time.
Everyone just kind of deals with it. And I feel like she just kind of gets by, free without anyone really. It's like, oh, it's just Armstrong being Armstrong. Like, no. Agnes, you got to put a stop to this. I'm just saying. I don't care if she starts getting all whimpery and sad every time. It's like, oh, I'm going to lose my house. Get a job somewhere else. Sorry.
Yeah. Thems were the time, unfortunately. But yeah, I was annoyed. I was like, seriously, we're going to have to like deal with Armstrong still? Like, come on.
And of course, Miss Scott is like the absolute nicest and even like kind of stands up for Armstrong multiple times. I'm just like, oh, brother.
Like, she is such a good person.
Yeah.
And Armstrong doesn't deserve it.
She doesn't. But maybe she'll learn her lesson in season 3. But if we're being real, probably season 5. But who am I to say? Okay. This next one, I know you're going to have lots to say. Marion Brooks being engaged to Dashiell. She's really like falling back right now. I could see the trauma flooding back over her face again.
I felt so bad for Marion. So okay. So since day one, since season 1, episode 1, I have been like, her and Larry have to get together.
Mm-hmm.
They have to. And when Dashiell came along, it really, really had conflicted feelings.
Because she was
like,
falling for it.
I was like, this is a good man. Like, for the time, this is a good man. And he pulls you, the same in season 1 with the other guy that ended up being trash. Like, he like pulls you in and pulls you in, and then he's at dinner calling her by his dead wife's name and being like, of course you'll give up your passions when you're married. Why would you have any?
Good thing you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah. And Marion's just like,
look over
what?
at Agnes and she has her thumbs up, just like, yeah.
I love it because Agnes is like, yeah. And then he calls her the wrong name and Agnes is like, oh. You can visibly see Agnes be like, oh no.
Oh no,
oops.
Not again. Yeah, I actually was never a fan of Dashiell. I just felt like it was way too pushy the entire time with like being like, oh, hang out with my daughter and like, she needs a motherly figure, and I don't know, it just felt weird for me the entire time. So I actually was never on board, and I was very relieved to see it didn't carry on, hopefully, into season 3, because he gave me weird vibes from the beginning, and I just think Mary needs to do what we all know needs to happen, which is marry Larry.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't find it that strange, although I've watched like so many like TV shows and movies and like books and stuff like within this time period are similar ones. So I'm like, the fact that like a handsome guy widowed with a daughter finds like another attractive young woman and is just like, oh yeah, you'll be good wife material, and just pursues that very quickly. I'm like, yeah, it happened.
I mean, it's typical. I mean, I thought for sure, I was like, yeah, I guess we're going to just wrap this up and get married, and maybe the finale will be a wedding episode. Thank God it didn't. But
I know. I was a little afraid that like they'd get married and then she'd realize, or like Larry would realize, like, oh my gosh, I love my next door neighbor.
Yeah. Again, if Susan Blaine is no longer available, then I think Larry and Marion need to get together.
Oh yeah.
I think Susan's clearly off the table.
Did you see Larry at the engagement when he drops down to one knee? Did you see Larry's face?
He was not happy about it, not thrilled.
No. No.
And I was making the same face. I was clenching my fist.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Also, Aunt Ada's storyline this season was so bittersweet.
It was beautiful. I loved watching it. At first, I was like, I don't know about this. But then just once
Yeah.
you see them get married, of course. When Agnes walks in during the wedding and sits down, I was a complete wreck. I was sobbing. It was so nice. I did feel like the storyline was a little rushed. I get they were like, we don't know if we're moving into a season 3. We're going to wrap this up real quickly.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I just felt like a little rushed, but I still loved it. It was beautiful. And I just wish Aunt Ada could be happy. And I wish it lasted more than 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah. I almost wish they had started this like the end of last season.
Yeah.
And just like had them get like serious in this season.
Yeah.
Like that would have been cute.
Let the love sauce simmer a little bit.
Yeah. But it was very nice. She got what she always wanted in life. And when Agnes is like sitting, or not, yeah, Agnes, when Agnes is sitting by his like sick bed and she's like, she only has to think of you on this earth to like feel warmed and loved. I'm like, Agnes, that's so sweet. I was crying.
Yeah. Ugh, I'm going to get emotional now. And then for the final 2 scandals, which I was saving for last because they kind of controlled this season. First, the Met versus the Academy. We have Mrs. Russell versus Mrs. Astor. The perfect battleground. Elizabeth, which side were you on?
The Met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Met. Like, clearly everyone at the Academy is too stuffy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to be where Mrs. Russell is, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. I'd be at the Met. I mean, I would have been one of those people that Mrs. Astor didn't like because I was always with Mrs. Russell. However, I still would like a night at the Academy. I mean, can I not go to both? I guess probably not, but I would like to.
If I was living there, I definitely would have been old money that also got a booth at the Met and been like, well, now I have options.
Yeah, you would be old money. That's so funny.
Oh, I'd be old money.
Yeah. That's funny.
I wouldn't keep that from letting me have fun with the new money people, though.
Right. And I just love Mrs. Astor, too. I mean, she is one of my favorite characters. It just, we have to have, like we said earlier, we like a good conflict. Okay. It's low stakes conflict. We could have our favorites fight against each other. Yeah. So I was always with Mrs. Russell.
Oh, same.
And I just find myself standing by Mrs. Russell until we get to our last scandal of our quickfire scandal round. Elizabeth, what is going on with Mrs. Russell's daughter and the Duke? The Duke or the Prince?
Spencer, have you ever heard of an American dollar princess?
So you and I have already had this conversation at length behind the scenes, but please remind our audience because I know you're very passionate about this.
So during the Gilded Age, it was a lot of the British aristocracy was actually losing their money and could not afford their estates. So they were sending their sons over to America to marry all the rich heiresses. And the heiresses' families wanted the prestige of old European and like British titles. So they were literally selling off their daughters.
And man.
Some of them had okay lives. I think Winston Churchill's mother was one of these people, and she had like an okay life. A lot of them had very sad lives because they basically were just taken to England to have babies and have all their money be taken by their husbands.
No, that's so sad. I don't want Gladys to be one of these, what did he call them, $1 million babies?
American dollar princess.
Oh, right. That would make me so sad. I love Gladys, and she doesn't deserve this, but we know damn well what Mrs. Russell is doing.
Here's the thing, though. Okay, here's the thing, though, Spencer. Remember when her father promised her he would support her choice for marriage no matter what, so long as she didn't marry Oscar.
Yeah, which fair.
So I think because in the very last scene, Mr. Russell realizes something isn't right.
He said, wait a minute.
He's
Why
like,
is that
"What?"
man here? What did you do? Because I checked the checking account and no money was withdrawn.
Yeah. And he's like, he's calling us by our names. Excuse me. What?
Yeah.
And so he knows something's going on. Clearly, Gladys doesn't care about this man in the slightest. She's paying no attention to him.
She's, I dare to say, a little clueless at this moment.
Yes.
And everyone's, and she's dressed like a Who from How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
She
girl,
looked
read the
lovely,
room.
but that was a lot.
She looks amazing. The costume's amazing, but the hairstyle, it's giving Cindy Lou Who.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Elizabeth, with that was our not so quick fire round of the Gilded Age scandals from season 2. If I had a good time, if I had more tea, we could go on and on and on.
Yes.
But we still have to play our favorite game. Are you ready, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Let's do it, Daniel.
The one costume to rule them all.
Okay, Elizabeth. Well, I think my one costume to rule them all should be of no surprise to you. It is, of course, Mrs. Russell's opera gown she wears to the Met in the finale episode. She is just a vision, this trailing gown. I love the teal color that kind of looks like the darker blue on top of it kind of looks like a iron rod fence. It just, I mean, the hair, the tiara, the jewelry, everything about it to me is flawless. And I just love that moment where she walks into her box and everyone just kind of stands and looks at her. And it's just like, oh, the queen is here, you know, like that. That's what I'm talking about. This is what I wanted. Even if she just sold her daughter off to this prince/duke, I don't know. I gotta say, I'm still, Mrs. Russell's going to have to try a lot harder than that to not have me on her side.
You're still rooting for her. You're still rooting for her.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Blind loyalty.
Yeah, I understand. I do love this look as well. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. And just so of the time, I really love it. And I think my one costume to rule them all will also not be a surprise. I love Aunt Ada's wedding look. It's so her. It's so especially when she gets like the veil on and like she just looks like it's simple, but in the cathedral, she just like is the center of attention, like in this very subtle, beautiful way. And it's just like, it chokes you up. Like, you're like, oh, like this is literally like everything she wanted from her life in this moment. And it's really beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I remember the first time I saw it, I was kind of taken aback. I was like, oh, is she wearing blue as a wedding dress? But then I'm like, she has such a vibrant personality, such a vibrant soul. It works. And it's just beautiful. And I know it also is like, you know, period accurate too. And it just, everything about it just feels right. And you can't help but just smile. So I agree with you. That's a good one. Costume rule them all. And also, dare I say, saw it coming.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, what a fun episode. I can't believe it's finally over. I mean, we've been talking about the Gilded Age season 2 for a while. Yeah. And I guess there'll probably be another season or 2 before we talk about Gilded Age season 3. But let me just tell you, it's coming. Consider it recorded because we will be there when you all need us to talk about the Gilded Age.
Absolutely. I love this season. And if you want to tell us what you loved about this season, you can leave a voicemail at 626-515-1826. Leave a little message for us, or you could email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com.
Well, Elizabeth, for our next episode, we are really changing the pace here.
Yeah.
Because we are starting our annual series that we coined a few seasons ago, and we've just kept with it every summer now. We are starting what?
Hot Girl Summer.
And we're starting it with perhaps one of the hottest Hot Girl Summer movies of the year. And I mean quite literally, because it looks very hot in this movie. We're talking about Furiosa.
I'm excited. I have not seen this yet. I'm so excited to go see it. I am really, really excited for the movie and for this season, this Hot Girl Summer season.
Yeah, we have a great lineup coming. I also have not seen Furiosa, but I know it just came out a couple days ago. I've read a couple reviews here and there, so I'm just going to say looking forward to seeing it for myself and talking about the costumes, because we know that they were done by Jenny Bevan once again, and Jenny Bevan does not miss. If you want more of our show, don't forget to go to youtube.com/@theartofcostume, where you could see our episodes on YouTube coming out every Wednesday. We also post some shorts as well. You can follow us on Instagram at The Art of Costume Pod, TikTok at The Art of Costume. If you want to head over to our merch store, get yourself a t-shirt to prepare yourself for Hot Girl Summer, go to theartofcostume.com/podstore. And as always, leave us a 5-star text review on Apple Podcast and or rate us on Spotify. It really does help us get noticed. Just whatever you got to do. Just 5 stars really makes us feel nice and warm on the inside.
5 stars, comment on somebody's thighs. I don't know.
Yeah. If you could rewrite that comment, but in the review section.
Yeah.
We'd really appreciate that. Elizabeth, I look forward to riding through the deserts of whatever universe Mad Max takes place in, of Furiosa, and look forward to talking to you soon.
I can't wait to talk about this with you, everybody. Have a fantastic week.
The Art of Costume podcast is hosted and produced by Elizabeth Joy Glass and Spencer Williams. Our audio engineering and editing is done by Dan White. Follow us on TikTok at The Art of Costume and Instagram at The Art of Costume Pod. If you want to support the show, go to theartofcostume.com/podstore. For more podcast updates, costume reviews, deep dives, and interviews, go to theartofcostume.com, a blog dedicated to highlighting the best in costume design.